In the world of slapstick comedy, no group stood out more than the Three Stooges. Their silly, over-the-top routines were shown in movies, studied by comedians, and became a big part of American humor. They were everywhere, and people couldn't get enough of them. But as with many famous acts, their success came at a price. One of the trio, Curly Howard, was especially loved. His high-pitched squeals, funny spins, and bald head made him instantly recognizable and unforgettable. Everyone laughed at his antics, but very few knew what he was really going through behind the scenes. Curly, whose real name was Jerome Lester Horwitz, wasn't always the clown we saw on screen. In fact, he never planned on being part of the act. He was called Babe by his family and had a more polished, handsome appearance that didn't fit the wild image of the Three Stooges. His brothers Moe and Shemp were already doing comedy, but Curly was doing his own thing, using his charm and good looks in a different kind of show business. That all changed in 1932 when Shemp left the act. Moe needed someone to fill the spot, so he asked his brother Jerome. But there was a problem. Jerome didn't look like a stooge. He had thick hair and looked too clean-cut. So Moe did something drastic. He shaved Jerome's head completely. At first, it was shocking. But when he walked out bald and wide-eyed, the act suddenly worked. Ted Healy, the man managing the group, immediately approved. Jerome became Curly, and the group found the perfect mix of characters. Curly brought an energy no one had ever seen before. He was loud, silly, and full of physical comedy. His wild movements, strange noises, and funny expressions made people of all ages laugh. While Moe was the bossy leader and Larry was the calm one, Curly was the heart of the group. But the job was exhausting. Every fall, spin, and stunt that made people laugh caused real pain. He had to rehearse endlessly and do multiple takes to get things right. He got bruises, cuts, and worse. Off camera, he felt tired and worn down. Emotionally, it was just as hard. Playing such a silly, high-energy character every day took a toll. He wasn't just pretending. He had to become someone else entirely. And it all started with his shaved head, which reminded him daily of what he gave up to be famous. Before becoming a stooge, Curly loved his thick hair. It made him feel handsome and confident. But once he became Curly, that hair had to go. Shaving his head became a daily reminder of what he lost. Makeup artists and crew members noticed how quiet Curly became when it was time to shave. He'd often wear a hat between scenes, trying to hide his bald scalp. It wasn't just about looks. Losing his hair made him feel like he had lost a part of himself. Even though he was beloved by millions, he often wondered if people loved him or just the silly character he played. It made him feel alone. Away from the cameras, Curly struggled with relationships too. He married 4 times, each time hoping someone would love him for who he truly was. But none of the marriages lasted. He became more lonely and unsure of himself. He started drinking more and missing work. People around him saw that something was wrong, but the show had to go on, and the studio cared more about the performance than the person. Curly told friends that before he was famous, women looked at him with real affection. But once he became Curly, the attention changed. People laughed at him instead of with him. The character he played had taken over his real identity. Every day, when he looked in the mirror, he saw a man pretending to be someone else. The schedule at Columbia Pictures made things even worse. Although Curly earned a good salary for the time, about $60,000 a year, he had no control over his work. He was treated like a tool for profit. His days started very early and were packed with rehearsals, filming, and live shows. He traveled for weeks at a time, performing in front of crowds across the country. There was no time to rest. The stress and pressure pushed him to drink even more. Curly was the life of the show, the funny man who made everyone laugh. But inside, he was dealing with pain, pressure, and sadness. He gave everything to his role, his health, his confidence, and even his identity. Behind every joke and every fall was a man who just wanted to be seen and loved for who he truly was. The stress of performing constantly took a serious toll on Curly Howard's health. Over time, he developed high blood pressure, and the pressure of always needing to be funny started to affect his mind. His sharp wit and fast-paced comedic timing began to slip. His friends and co-stars noticed small but troubling changes. Curly, who was once full of energy and quick with a joke, began speaking more slowly. His words became harder to understand, and he no longer delivered his jokes with perfect timing. His famous punchlines often came out wrong, and the bright energy in his eyes faded, replaced by tiredness and sadness. Still, Curly never let anyone know how badly he was struggling. He kept smiling and acting silly, hiding his pain from everyone. The thought of not shaving his head, of no longer being Curly Howard, was too painful. The character had become his entire identity. It made him feel loved and important. So, even if it meant damaging his health and personal happiness, he kept going. By the early 1940s, show business had started to wear him down. The man who once made millions laugh was slowly being broken by the pressure. He was stuck in a role that no longer gave him joy. By 1945, Curly's once lively and spirited personality had started to disappear. While filming the comedy If a Body Meets a Body, tragedy struck. In the middle of filming a funny scene, Curly suddenly collapsed on set. He had suffered a mild stroke. Everyone was shocked, but the incident was not taken seriously enough. He was taken for emergency medical help but came back to the set the very same day. Though he still smiled, his smile was weaker, his eyes had lost some of their sparkle, and his movements were slower. Even his laughter sounded a little forced. Moe and Larry, his closest co-stars, saw right away that something was wrong. They noticed his hands trembled and that his reactions were slower. The people in charge at the studio noticed too, but the show had to go on. Hollywood's schedule didn't allow for rest, even when someone was clearly suffering. Curly's health got worse quickly. His last official appearance with the Three Stooges was in the 1947 short film Half-Wit's Holiday. On that set, Curly seemed like a shadow of who he used to be. His usual energy and joy were gone. He moved more slowly, his voice was quieter, and his eyes looked tired and far away. Though the people around him still laughed, they also felt sadness. They knew their friend was fading. Not long after that film, Curly had another, more serious stroke. This time, he could not recover. The studio had no choice but to replace him with his older brother, Shemp Howard. Though the public only saw a new face in the group, those closest to Curly felt a deep loss. His condition worsened quickly. He was moved from one hospital to another, and then to private care. The man who once loved the spotlight was now hidden away, far from the stage and the fans who adored him. Even though his body was weak, Curly still had something inside he needed to share. A truth he had carried for years. In the quiet months before his death, with time to think and reflect, Curly became more serious. His family, caretakers, and old friends saw how frustrated he had become. It wasn't anger at his career or at the fame he had gained, it was something deeper. He simply wanted to be understood. Curly had always loved being a stooge. But even more than that, he wanted people to remember him as Jerome, the real person behind the silly character. He had dreams, fears, and feelings that had been hidden behind a bald head and wild behavior. In a private, brave moment, Curly finally opened up. He wrote a note to his brother Moe. It was short, honest, and powerful. The note was kept within the family, passed down quietly, like a sacred truth. In it, Curly admitted something no one had known before. He had never liked shaving his head. From the first time Moe gave him a razor and told him to become the bald, loud Curly Howard, he had felt forced to give up a piece of himself. Shaving his head wasn't just about changing his appearance. It felt like losing his identity. It made him deeply embarrassed, especially in front of women, who only saw him as the goofy bald man. The bald look became a kind of mask that he couldn't take off. It locked him into a role that no longer felt like acting. It felt like prison. That final confession was deeply human. It showed the cost of all the laughter he gave to the world. Behind every silly fall, every loud laugh, and every funny face was a man who just wanted to be seen for who he really was. Jerome Lester Horwitz, The boy who once dreamed of a quiet, normal life, had disappeared behind the character of Curly. The world loved the clown, but few truly knew the man. Curly Howard, the beloved member of the Three Stooges, became a character shaped over time by what the studios demanded and what fans wanted. People loved Curly for his joyful energy, his silly, childlike behavior, and especially his shiny bald head that stood out in every scene. That bald head became his signature look, the thing that made him instantly recognizable and unforgettable. Fans would cheer and say things like, "Oh sweetheart, you're wonderful." But behind that famous look was a pain that never really went away. For Jerome Howard, Curly's real name, shaving his head wasn't just a funny part of the act. It was something that deeply embarrassed him. Every time he looked in the mirror after shaving, he felt like he was losing a piece of himself. The man he saw wasn't Jerome anymore. It was someone created for the cameras, someone he didn't choose to be. He didn't hate the audience or blame anyone for his fame. What hurt him was that he had no control over his own appearance, his own identity. The character of Curly was like a mask. But wearing that mask came at a cost. Each morning, under the cold, bright lights of the dressing room, shaving his head was not just a routine. It was a painful reminder that he had to put aside who he really was. It was a daily sacrifice, giving up his true self so the world could laugh. He was expected to do it, not because he wanted to, but because the entertainment business needed him to look and act a certain way. Simple, funny, and familiar. Even when the cameras stopped and the studio lights turned off, the feeling of being someone else never left him. Underneath the laughter and jokes, Jerome Howard carried quiet emotional wounds. He had traded his own image, his reflection in the mirror, for the sound of applause. And no matter how famous or loved he became, he never truly felt like himself again. Sadly, Curly's life ended too soon. He died in 1952 at the age of just 48. The world mourned the loss of a comedy legend, but most people didn't understand the pain he had lived with. It's only in more recent years that those closest to him, Mo, Larry, his family and friends, have shared the real story of the man behind the funny face. They described Jerome as a deeply sensitive and gifted person who only wanted to be seen as more than just Curly. Behind all the silly faces and slapstick moments was a man struggling to hold on to his identity. He loved making people laugh, but it hurt that he had to disappear to do it. One of the most touching truths that has come out since his passing is that Curly hated shaving his head. To many, that might seem like a small thing. But for Jerome, it was huge. It was the moment each day when he stopped being himself and became someone else. That bald head was the first and most obvious part of himself that he lost, and even after years of success, it still hurt him to look in the mirror. Curly was a genius of comedy, but he carried a sadness that few ever saw. His greatest act may not have been the falls or the funny voices. It was the quiet strength he showed, sacrificing his own identity to make the world smile. He gave the world joy, but the price he paid was very real. Underneath the laughter, there was a man who just wanted to be himself. He didn't want to look like Curly. He was forced to. We laughed because he wanted us to be happy. But at what cost? If you had to give up a part of yourself just to succeed, would you do it?